Good afternoon and good evening and good day to all of our participants joining for the fourth webinar in the series of ELT talks organized by the British Council in Argentina. My name is Robert Chatfield. I'm the country director of the British Council in Argentina, and it's my pleasure to be your host today. First, I would like to thank our co-organizers, National Geographic Learning, for making this session possible. And today, we're going to be talking about how English teachers can and indeed should be incorporating sustainable development goals into their daily lessons. So I know some of you have participated in these webinars before, but if you haven't been able to join us, you can always go back to the YouTube British Council in the Americas and look for the playlist ELT Talks Argentina. Now, let me remind you of our house rules. You're welcome and encouraged to share your comments and questions, making sure, please, that you maintain a respectful and positive communication. And remembering, of course, not to share any personal or sensitive information in the chat. And please note that any harmful, violent, or inappropriate comments will not be tolerated. We will deactivate the chat briefly at the beginning and at the end of the session so we can post some links of interest. The Q&A function will be available throughout the entire session, so please write your questions there and we'll do our best to go through them during the talk or at the end of the session. And as always, I'd like to thank our supporting partners, the Teaching Touch, who do an amazing job for us on Instagram, PlanUp Education and Twinkle Argentina. Thank you very much for everything you've done as well and offering the free logins. So you'll find in the chat links to their excellent content and some special offers as well. Now, let me welcome our speaker today. I'm really pleased that Jair Felix is a National Geographic Learning Senior ELT Academic Consultant for Latin America. He has a BA in TEFL from University Autónoma de Sinaloa in Mexico and a postgraduate degree on teacher development from the College of St. Mark and St. John, Plymouth, UK. Jair, I don't know how you get all of that on your business card, but welcome. It's absolutely fantastic to have you in the session. And Jair's been involved in language teaching and teacher training for more than 30 years now, and he's conducted workshops on various topics such as lesson planning, discourse analysis for language teachers, action research, educational technology, and 21st century skills, amongst others. So Jair also holds a diploma in teaching English for special purposes and the e-tutoring certificate from the British Council. He's frequently a presenter at ELT conferences throughout Latin America. So without further ado, Jair, over to you and have a great session.
Thank you, Robert. And incorporate them in our daily lessons. That's going to be the main topic of our session today. And I'll start by sharing my screen. And I hope you can all see my screen on yours now. Beautiful, fantastic. And since we're going to be talking about sustainability and we're going to be talking about how to inspire our students through the practice of English to make the world a more sustainable place, I would like to begin our session by asking a simple question. I want you to think of the issues, the problems that the world is facing as we speak. What are the major problems? What are the major issues that we are experiencing as a human family as we inhabit planet Earth? What would be those main issues that we are facing as a human family? Let me see what you think on regards of those issues and problems in the chat box. Global warming, war, absolutely. Pollution, very good. Climate change, thank you, yes. Hunger, access to water, water accessibility, absolutely. Inequality in the distribution of resources, yes. Access to education. Economic problems as well, absolutely. Poverty, hunger, health systems, gender equality, absolutely. Pollution, deforestation, health, very good. Racism, nice, absolutely. And I'm asking you this not just to get you on, a sad, gloomy mood. That's not the idea of my question. But I thought it would be it would be good for the sake of this session's development to set a common level of understanding, if you may, on what are those issues that we're facing as a human family, and then from such awareness, what are the actions that we could take and should take as language educators in order to help the world become a better place to live, a more sustainable place to live in. So all of the things that you've mentioned are actually what I've included as the main issues, the main problems that we face as a human family right now. There's poverty, there's hunger in many places in the world. There's health issues, access to high quality health services. There's issues on education. Not everyone can access the same level of quality in education in the world. There's gender inequality. There's the issue of accessing clean water and how we've polluted water resources globally. There's main issues with life below water. We've polluted the ocean in such a way that the life beneath water is suffering a lot. This is an actual image captured by a National Geographic explorer that actually portrays how terrible pollution in life below water is. But it's not only life below water, it's also life on land that is suffering a lot. And you could take a look at this beautiful picture and maybe you're thinking, but what's wrong with it? It's a beautiful portrait of two elephants. Look at it in detail. What's wrong with the image? What are we missing from this image? No tusks, absolutely. Absolutely. So once you realize it, and once you start imagining how much these animals have been suffering because of illegal hunting and the way in which we've put their species into risk of extinction, that's when we start realizing that we're also affecting life on land massively. So there's issues on accessing affordable and clean energy, as some of you noted in the chat box. There's issues on peace. There's issues on justice. There's, of course, there's climate change. There's this urgent need for stopping climate change and global warming. So what we're in need for now, and what I want to get into enlisting, or by enlisting all of these issues that we've gone through, is the urgent need for innovative strategies in order to promote a desire, an inspiration for caring about the planet. We've tried many different ideas in the past, but it is pretty obvious that they haven't worked that well because we are still going through all of the issues and all of the problems that we've already enlisted. So there's an urgent need for innovating in what we do as educators in order to promote this sensibility towards caring about the planet. Because it is in our hands to start developing a more sustainable future. It is our obligation as educators to start planting that seed of sustainability in our students. Because what we're getting from planet Earth right now is an SOS call. That's pretty much what we're getting from planet Earth. An urgent need for help, an urgent call for help, I should say. And we cannot just play, we cannot just go blind and we cannot just go without acknowledging the urgent SOS call that we're getting from planet Earth. So there's a lot of institutions that have been researching on ways for promoting sustainability through education. This is a document that you can actually Google for and download. It's called Teaching for Global Competence in a Rapidly Changing World. And what they're saying is that mass migration, the digital revolution, globalization, the prospect of climate instability, and now the pandemic, plus all the issues that we've enlisted, are triggering new concerns and demanding a new kind of learner, a learner that is able and willing to create and innovate in lieu for sustainability in our planet. So all these changes, the digital revolution, international migration, environmental change, have implications for students and educators. So this report from the Asia Society is pretty much stating it very clearly. There's a demand for a new kind of graduate. There's a demand for a new kind of education. And so what we need to do now, it's pretty much transform what we do in the classrooms in order to promote this idea of sustainability in a global way. And I love this idea of transformation because it is at the core of what we teachers should do. And transformation is needed now more than ever. Because as Peter Senge stated, unless we change our way of living, the prospect ahead, it's not very encouraging. There must be a spiritual revolution as the only possible way we can imagine all of these issues actually changing. We need either to change what we're doing or do it with the kind of passion and conviction that we can bring to it. Because without this changing, this revolution, this transformation of what we're currently doing, no new policies will be developed and no drastic change will occur. So today, I'd like to explore why the UNESCO Sustainable Development Goals, also known as the SDGs, are important for education and English language teaching in the 21st century. Simply put, I strongly believe that the teaching of English should be done through real-world contexts. And we'll see how integrating sustainable development goals into language learning can help to motivate students and make learning more relevant and more memorable at the same time, and how it can engage students and help them build skills they need to be successful. Education, my friends, is indeed a powerful tool of transformation. So let's use that power in order to promote sustainability and the transformation of our current situation, looking for a better world. That's the power that we have in our hands as instructors, as educators of the most globally used tool for communication in the world. We teach English. English is by far the most globally used language for inter and cross-cultural communication in this planet right now. So the urgency for enriching our English language teaching practice with sustainable development goals is extremely tangible. And we should remind ourselves of a mission. We should look for a mission in our daily practice. I can share my mission with you, which is to inspire the future generation of leaders and decision makers to be better caretakers of the planet and each other, and enable them to be successful and responsible citizens of the 21st century. All this while they learn and practice the most globally used language of our times, which is English. That's my mission. That's my goal. That's what I think of every day when I plan a lesson, when I look for new content, when I select materials for my students. I want to inspire them. I want to enable them through the practice of English to become successful and responsible citizens of the 21st century. And again, we should remind ourselves that we teach what we teach and how we teach can have significant impact in our students. And I always talk about this lady that you see on the screen right now. Her name's Maritza Morales. She's a teacher and nowadays a National Geographic explorer. She's a conservationist, an environmentalist, and an educator. And she's created an environmental theme park in the Yucatan Peninsula here in Mexico, where students can learn how to become caretakers of the environments. So a few minutes ago, I was talking about transformation, and there's no question about the role of teachers in transforming the lives of their students, because you can actually teach the world while teaching English. And later, this will connect to the desire of all teachers to deliver fantastic classes. But I know there's not enough time and resources to prepare. So maybe using sustainable development goals to improve your English classes can be possible when the content that you present to your students has already been created with lessons like what you see on the screen right now. Because when you connect the language to social issues and engaging photography and relevant information, that's when you get to that moment of inspiration. That's how you get to enable your students for becoming successful users of English and successful global citizens in the 21st century. Remember that by empowering your students with the language and with the knowledge that revolve around the UNESCO Sustainable Development Goals, you can help them to bring their multicultural background into the classroom. And that will create an environment that fosters a global mindset. And of course, as language teachers, we have preset objectives, and there's specific language items that we gotta teach. Like, for example, typically, when the program indicates that we have to teach the simple past, we typically ask our students to talk about their past vacation, being real or imaginary. So typically, the activity goes like, tell us, which places you visited? What did you eat? What did you, enjoy most in your vacation, etc., etc. So we're typically picturing this amazing time that was spent in vacation. But you got to remember that learning English is about communication, and it's fun talking about dream vacations or maybe amazing food, etc. But I think it's also important that students learn how to communicate, to solve problems, to think critically, to gain the language skills, the global skills, and other soft workforce skills they need to be successful in today's world. So it's not only presenting this ideal vision of the amazing holiday we just spent, but it's also presenting real content, like what happens to those amazing places after the holiday season. And this is a real photo of a Bali beach after the high touristic season. How about presenting students with a compare and contrast activity in which they can talk about cause and effect, in which they can talk about consequences, and from there, start thinking about more sustainable ways for spending the greatest vacation ever without polluting the places we visit. So through that, you're not only practicing the language, but at the same time, you're planting the seed for sustainability on your students. And I mean, it's not just about presenting students with problems. It's actually presenting them with solutions rather than problems. So we can invite our students, we can encourage them to think critically and perhaps even creatively as they consider their own solutions to the problems that are presented. So, for example, in one of the books that I've held publishing for National Geographic Learning, we introduce these two teenage sisters who live in Bali. I mean, their home is beautiful, but they noticed that there were plastic bags everywhere. They wanted to do something to help. So they decided, with the help of their school teacher, they decided to start an organization that they eventually called Bye Bye Plastic Bags. And they worked hard to convince shop owners and even government officials, not only that it is an important issue, but to actually do something. And they even were invited to give a TED Talk about their idea. And when you visit their website, buybuyplasticbags.com, there's a quote on their website. If you don't know about a problem, you can't fix it. Hence the importance of making our students aware, not only of the problems, but the potential solutions in order to trigger their critical thinking and their creativity. And since then, since these two girls started this movement, the Bali government instituted a ban on all single plastic use with the goal of being plastic-free by the end of last year. Isn't that amazing? And maybe you're wondering, but what skills did these Balinese teens need? What skills did they need to succeed? Well, they needed creativity, they needed resilience, they needed collaboration, and they also needed English to make their idea travel and to make the idea, intelligible and comprehended by the rest of the world. So you see the link between 21st century skill, sustainable development goals, and language practice through this very nice example. Okay, so this is the idea. And yeah, they needed English, and they needed effective communication, and they needed abilities for negotiating and presenting and organizing and persisting, being resilient. And yeah, Bali is improving, but every beach and waterway in the world is facing similar challenges. The Sustainable Development Goals help raise awareness, while the materials we present in the classroom can help students gain the language, the skills, and motivation to take action. So by incorporating the messages of the Sustainable Development Goals and role models like Melody and Isabel from Bali, your students will learn that individuals can make a difference, okay? And I mean, I've been talking a lot about Sustainable Development Goals, but perhaps not all of you are fully aware of even the existence of SDGs. So let's dive deeper on how they came to be, what the UNESCO Sustainable Development Goals are, and let's share how they can be incorporated into your English classrooms. And I mean, we all know that we're facing big challenges today. You enlisted quite a few in the chat box at the beginning of this session. So you mentioned poverty and hunger, inequality, climate change, and they're just some of the issues we need to address urgently. Big challenges need bold action to overcome them. And that is where the global goals come in. They are a plan agreed to by world leaders at the United Nations to build a greener, fairer, better world by 2030. In 2015, those leaders first came together with UNESCO to create a blueprint for action. And that blueprint is called the Sustainable Development Goals. Those are, again, 17 goals with 169 different targets and over 230 indicators for measuring progress. But at the heart of Sustainable Development Goals is preserving the world through those 5 pillars: attending people, preserving the planet, bringing in prosperity, peace, and triggering partnership. So those 5 pillars are at the core of every goal in the agenda. Let's care for the people. Let's preserve the planet. Let's work towards prosperity and peace. And let's trigger collaboration and partnership among nations, among communities, among humans. That is, again, at the core of Sustainable Development Goals. And they use principles that have to do with integration, universality, so the goals apply equally to every country, no matter their context. They talk about inclusivity and leaving no one behind, starting with the most vulnerable first. And if you ask me, I think those principles should also be put together and presented and portrayed in each and every one of our lesson plans. Our lesson plans, our teaching practice should include integration, universality, inclusivity, and leaving no one behind. So that's why when I started studying Sustainable Development Goals, I went crazy on the different ways for applying them in the classroom. Particularly when you take a look at one of the most important goals in terms of supporting the rest, which is goal number 4, that has to do with education. And what they say is that education is a human right and a force for sustainable development and peace. Every goal in the agenda requires education to empower people, not only with the knowledge, but also the skills and values to live in dignity, to build their lives and contribute to their societies. So what we do as educators is of extreme importance for the development of Sustainable Development Goals. Because, again, education is at the core of the agenda. Education empowers people. And we gotta present our students not only with the traditional language knowledge, the traditional skills practice, but also 21st century skills such as creativity, collaboration, cross-cultural understanding, and values. So they learn through the practice of English to live in dignity, to build their lives and contribute to their society, right? So the idea of bringing those concepts into English language teaching was, for me, extremely clear from the very beginning, particularly when I kept on studying this and I realized that the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, after these Sustainable Development Goals were created and published, they created a global framework of competencies from the goals. And in 2018, the PISA organization began testing for global competency along with literacy, numeracy, and scientific understanding. And you know, the PISA test has been described as the world's most important exam, as it's given in over 80 countries. And they're now testing global competency based on Sustainable Development Goals. And I have a question for you. Now that we're a bit more familiar with Sustainable Development Goals and this global competency framework, my question would be, what skills do globally competent students need to have? What do you think are those skills that are essential for 21st century students to become globally competent nowadays? Let's see the chat. Very good. Critical thinking, collaboration, decision-making, empathy, empathetic skills, communication skills, the 4 C's, creativity, very good. Soft skills, empathy, being good communicators, digital skills, cooperation, a love for nature, global consideration, problem-solving skills, grit, a sense of belonging, beautiful. Very nice. Echo skills, emotional intelligence, absolutely, absolutely. And according to the OECD and the UNESCO, there are 4 aspects, 4 main skills that actually embody and include all of the skills that you are talking about in the chat box so brightly. They say that these 4 skills that are essential include an understanding and appreciation of the of different perspectives and the worldviews of others. That is empathy, an understanding, an appreciation of others' perspectives. That is empathy. The ability, the skill for engaging in open, appropriate, and effective interactions across cultures. That is communication and interculturality, right? The possibility for examining local, global, and intercultural issues. And for that, you need critical thinking. In order to examine, in order to evaluate, in order to assess local, global, and intercultural issues, you need critical thinking. And of course, they have this call for action for collective well-being and sustainable development. So there's an urgent need to start practicing those skills as we teach the most globally used language in the planet, which is English. So now the biggest question in the talk: why should we incorporate sustainable development goals into our lessons? Why, after all the things that we've discussed, why do you think it is important to start paying attention for those sustainable development goals as we teach and practice English in our classrooms? It's our responsibility. It's on solidarity to create a global result. Absolutely. Very good. To empower students, because at the end, this is the only home we have. To raise awareness. Very good, Lucia. Fantastic. Awareness raising. To make our students sensitive on the topic, aware, because you learn by doing. Absolutely. We need to bring the world into the classroom so we can inspire students to protect them beautifully. If you ask me, when you think about those skills globally competent students need to have, they are a great fit for encouraging students to explore ideas and come up with solutions of their own, all while communicating authentically in the English classroom. But I would sum it up with 3 words, and they are motivation, relevance, and the development of skills. I think the 3 main reasons why we should incorporate sustainable development goals into our lessons is because by exposing our students to real-world content, we motivate them further to keep learning not only English, but to keep learning about the world and to keep inspiring them to make the world a more sustainable place to live in. Because it's completely relevant. It's urgent that we make our students aware of, again, not only the problems, but the potential solutions that we could devise in order to make the world a more sustainable place. And because through the analysis of all the issues and the problem-solving practices that we could incorporate into our daily teaching, we are practicing skills further. Not only language skills, not only reading, writing, listening, and speaking, but also those skills that you just mentioned in the chat box: creativity, communication, collaboration, cross-cultural understanding, etc., etc. So I think that we should start incorporating sustainable development goals into our daily lessons, because through them you motivate your students. For example, you can help them. You can get your students motivated to care about Sustainable Development Goal 6, which is clean water and sanitation. And you could do that by, for example, including role models in your daily practice, like Sylvia Earle. She's one of my personal heroes, a National Geographic explorer, an oceanographer, that through her actions and words inspires students to care about the ocean. She has said that with every drop of water you drink and every breath you take, you're connected to the sea, no matter where on earth you live. And with knowledge comes caring. The more you instruct your students on what's happening with the oceans in the world, the bigger the possibilities for them to start developing a sense of caring towards the oceans. As Sylvia states, we are at a critical moment where so many students may feel it is too late, that they can't make a difference. But Sylvia thinks differently. She says that this might be our last best chance to make a difference. And I strongly believe we should be challenging our students, because they can do more, because we, together with our students, can do more together. And yeah, all of us, teachers, administrators, editors, publishers like myself, you and I, we have the opportunity to make a real difference in the world. We have the opportunity to inspire students to make a difference, not just in their own lives, but in the world around them. And as Sylvia said, this is our moment. The things we do right now can make a profound difference for our future. And sometimes the content that you use for teaching English can incorporate aspects of more than one sustainable development goal. So for example, in this lesson that I helped designing, students explore both addressing poverty and sustainable cities and environments. And maybe you're now wondering, what is this a picture of? Well, this is an artist studio, and it's part of an ecotourism development that is creating jobs and protecting the environment. And the language practice comes from the reading. And this is a reading about Zita Cobb, who created this art studio. And like many others from Fogo Island, Zita had become an economic refugee. She'd left Fogo for a well-paying job in the oil industry, but now she's returned as a new kind of entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur. She left the corporate world to pursue her own goals. And she's focusing on supporting the needs of the local culture and the local environment, and not just business. She's taking the best tools from the traditional profit world and making this small, beautiful part of the world a better place, not just to be from, but to call home. So I strongly believe that as language educators, we're not just teaching English. We should take a holistic approach to language learning. It's not just vocabulary and grammar. students in our classrooms should be learning about the world. We should be sharing stories of role models like Zita. And we should present students with examples of people making a difference in the world in many different ways. We have to start offering inspiration and hope to our students. So motivating students to join a growing group of problem solvers is in our hands right now. And we should take advantage of that. Another topic, for example, that you can bring in has to do with responsible consumption and production. This is a sustainable development goal that we can all do our part for. As students are learning English, they can also gain information to help them and their families make better decisions, right? And just for you to get an idea of what I'm talking about, take a look at the photo that I have on the screen. And maybe you're now asking yourselves, what does a cup of coffee have to do with this presentation? Well, let me ask you a question. How many gallons of water does it take to make a cup of coffee? And yeah, you heard me right. I said gallons. How many gallons of water are needed to make a cup of coffee? Because I'm not just talking about the water that's needed, that's in the cup, but I'm also talking about the water that's needed for planting, growing, harvesting, and processing coffee beans. How many gallons of water? Take a wild guess. No idea. Well, I'll tell you, it's actually 37 gallons of water per cup in average. 37 gallons of water per cup in average. Now, how many gallons of water are needed to grow a pound of fig? Or, your favorite fruit? How many gallons of water are needed to grow a pound of your favorite fruit? Well, depending on the fruit, but in average is 379 gallons of water per pound. And of course, this doesn't mean that we should stop drinking coffee or eating fruit. No, but when you present the problem, you can start developing potential solutions for growing fruit on a more sustainable way, or growing coffee in a more sustainable way without having to use much water, for example, right? So it's not about the problem, it's the potential solutions, right? Now, how many gallons of water to make a pair of jeans? Any idea? It's actually 2,900. 2,900 gallons of water in average per pair of jeans. And again, it doesn't mean that you should stop wearing jeans. I love jeans. But it means that perhaps we can trigger creativity and innovation in the practice by making students aware of the issue and generating, through the practice of English, potential solutions to such issues, okay? It's critical thinking at its best. Thank you, Mabel. Absolutely. Very good. So present your students with such topics. Make them realize the importance of natural resources as you teach them the language. Make them appreciate those natural resources like water, for example. Ask them big questions. Ask your students, where do we get water? I've done this with my own students. 90% of the times, the answer is from the faucet. That's where we get water from. So they've no idea, they're not aware of the water cycle Why not using that knowledge in English to promote not only language practice, but also for them to develop a sense of caring for the planet, right? Because as my friend Enrique Lobnitz stated, we can always act, act, act. Enrique is a National Geographic explorer. He's based in Mexico, but he's developed a very amazing project for harvesting rainwater in order to provide families that have suffered from water scarcity for ages with running water, consumable water, after they've learned to filter rainwater at their homes. And it all started with a small action. His elementary school teacher, when he was a kid, made him aware of the water scarcity problem. So he decided to take a small action. And he started turning off the water faucet when brushing his teeth. Then he continued researching on the topic. He became an engineer and he created a rainwater harvesting system that it's now being funded by not only National Geographic, but many local governments in Latin America. So we can always act, act, act. And we can go from a small action to a big action. The problem is, or the issue, the core of it, I should say, is making students aware of the possibilities, making students aware of the realities, okay? And I think my time's almost up. So I'm gonna summarize my session. Let me just skip to this particular part that I wanna share with you, okay? Oh, you're not? I should share my screen again, right? There you go. So we talked about this before. We talked about sustainable development goals. We talked about the global competence framework. Whenever I talk to language teachers about these concepts, it is very typical that at the end of the session, they come and they ask, well, yeah, but if I were to follow this idea, how should I start? How should I begin incorporating sustainable development goals into my daily practice? How can I make sure I'm cooperating on the development of global competency on my students as I teach them English? And my advice has always been, start small, but make sure these 4 concepts are present in your daily practice. Make sure you're always infusing your English language teaching with global, authentic topics so that students have a true sense, a true awareness of the world and everything in it. So present them with global topics, present them with different perspectives, because traditionally, English language teaching has been a monocultural practice. If you're teaching American English, it's all about the US. If you're teaching British English, it's all about the UK. English is the global language of our times. So present them with different perspectives. Use a multicultural approach to enrich your practice of language teaching. Always go for communication strategies. English language learning in the 21st century shouldn't be based on memorization of grammatical structures and lexical items. English language instruction for global competence development should promote effective communication, providing your students with topics that are meaningful, purposeful, and relevant will trigger a desire to communicate. And remember, don't just focus on the problem, but more importantly, have your students take actions. Have your students devise potential solutions to the problems that you present. And through that, they put critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, communication into practice on a daily basis. So that's my advice to those teachers that have wondered, how is it that I can start implementing sustainable development goals into my class? Go for global topics, present your students with different perspectives, trigger a desire for effective communication and for taking action in your students. And I keep saying that it's important to use real-world content and to incorporate sustainable development goals into our curriculums. But you might ask, aren't we adding to the students' cognitive load with all this real information and skills that go beyond the language classroom? And the short answer is yes. We are adding to our students' cognitive load. But research has shown that when content is more interesting, learners tend to devote more effort to learning activities, and they achieve better learning outcomes. So it's more motivating. Real-world content provides opportunities for creative, authentic communication, which then provides opportunities to process the information more deeply. And when we talk about skills, we of course are first focused on language skills. That's what we do. We're language teachers. But the skills related to sustainable development goals are also important parts of making the content relevant, helping with cross-curricular, academic, and even career readiness. It's within these skills we're helping students to analyze information so that they can begin to form their own opinions, what they believe, who they want to be. So the English language class becomes the perfect place for your students to negotiate understanding and find their own voice to share those beliefs. So let's go for incorporating sustainable development goals, because they'll help you motivate your students further, because they're extremely relevant in the world we live in, and because they will help you develop skills further. And I'll finish my session by telling you how, by incorporating SDG, you fight against the reality of this post-pandemic time we're all going through. A lot of teachers have told me, in this post-pandemic stage that we're in, many of my students are apathetic. They're passive. They're only extrinsically motivated, but never intrinsically. They're very dependent and dogmatic. They're timid and fragile and very credulous. And by motivating your students further, by making the practice relevant, and by triggering skills further through SDGs, you can get to have students that are dynamic, that are curious, that are proactive, intrinsically motivated, independent-minded, that are open-minded and adventurous, that are robust and resilient, and that are skeptical, critical thinkers of information in the 21st century. So the benefits are plenty for incorporating SDGs into your daily teaching practice. Stefania Giannini once stated that we are increasingly asking if what people learn is truly relevant to their lives, if what they learn helps to ensure the survival of our planet. Education for sustainable development can provide the knowledge, the awareness, and action that empower people to transform themselves and transform societies. And I strongly believe on this mantra. I cannot do everything when it comes to solving world issues. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And if everyone does one little thing, it could make all the difference. So let's take this opportunity for enriching our teaching practice and empowering our students further through the practice of sustainable development goals in English language teaching. Thank you all very much. I don't know if we still have time for some questions, but again, thank you all very much for your very strong and very insightful participation in the chat box. Thank you.
Jair, I think the thing is with this, I think there's a very simple thing. I don't know if you know, but part of my role is I'm responsible for the environment for the British Council in the Americas. So this is a subject that's very important for me personally. And I think just as a sort of final reflection, there's two things. One is, you know, as a teacher, one of the most important things to have is passion and enthusiasm, and you have that. You know, enormous amounts of passion and enthusiasm. It's also really important to think that, you know, I'm 52 years old, so I've seen a lot of things in my life, but I've learned about 20 things in this session. I've learned a lot. I had no idea that some of the things that I eat and some of the clothes that I wear have this much of an impact on the environment. And I'm sure a lot of the people from all around Argentina didn't know that either. And it's really just important. It's one of the things I was talking to colleagues about is just the word sustainable. If something is sustainable, then it can keep going. If something is not sustainable, then it can't. And
Correct.
so much of what we do in the world cannot keep going. And that's as simple
Correct.
as that. And I think my reflection is that, you know, at the moment, things are very difficult. I'm sure you're aware, Jair, that things are very difficult in Argentina. We have a very, very challenging economic situation. Things are very difficult, still continue to be very difficult in Eastern Europe and between, you know, Ukraine and Russia. And we now have a major conflict that's grown up in the Middle East.
Right.
And these things are really frightening, and they frighten us as human beings, and we see things and we see people suffering, and it's awful. But we just need to kind of remember that, you know, as human beings, we sort of continue to fight over territory and fight over things. And at the end of the day, you know, the prediction for when the world will go through the 1.5 degree centigrade barrier, beyond which it will be difficult to return, keeps coming closer and closer. It used to be 2050, then it's 2040. So some are saying it may even be happening this year in terms of the temperatures in September. So, you know, this is a subject that, you know, what can we do as English teachers? Because often what people do with the environment is they say, well, what can I do? What can I do? Just little me. What I do doesn't matter. Yes, it does. What everybody does matters. And if we think that what we do doesn't matter, then nothing will change. If we think that what we do matters, then things will change. So if you as teachers take what you've learned from Jair today and you take it back into your classrooms, then the world will be a better place. There's some questions here. There's the one that's a little bit complicated because we've only got 1 minute, which is, are you optimistic about the course of our civilization? I think the answer is, I'm afraid I'm not. No, and I'm sure Jair probably isn't. But Jair, one important question: what is the name of the book that you've been showing? You've been showing a lot of information from a particular book.
They come from several different programs that I've helped producing for National Geographic Learning. I think it might be much simpler if you decided to go into nationalgeographiclearning.com and learn a bit more about our full portfolio of English language content with sustainable development topics.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Jair. Well, listen, everybody, thank you so much to everybody. I've seen all the different, I think most of the provinces in Argentina tonight. So I'm so grateful that everyone has come. You know, look at the things that are in the chat. There's a survey that you can do to get your certificate of attendance. You can also get Twinkle's premium membership for 2 weeks if you click that link. That's really good. There's loads of materials there. But more importantly, go to National Geographic Learning, have a look at the materials there and share. You know, share what you've learned today. We do these webinars for free because we want to share with people. So go back to your schools, go back to your institutes, share this material, pay it forwards, pay it outwards, and let's do our part in making the world a more sustainable place. So thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jair. It was an absolute pleasure having you with us today, and we hope you can come back and do this again sometime.
It'll be my pleasure. Absolutely.
Thanks very much.